Hello students, let's continue with the project management subject. Today we will see the second unit of project management, that is project identification, selection and planning. In first unit we have seen fundamentals of project management. In that we have seen what is actually the project, who is project manager, what is the team of project manager, how all the teams work one under another. This all we have seen in the first unit. Now we will see how to identify a particular project, then how to select project and how to do the planning. We have seen the life cycle of project management. In that we have seen we have to first select a project, then we have to do planning, or we have to make a flow chart regarding the steps that have to be followed one by the another for the purpose of project identification, selection and planning. Now let's start the second unit, project identification, selection and planning. First, we will see what are the topics that we will cover in this particular unit. What is the syllabus of this particular unit? In this unit, we will see what is actually the project identification and selection. We will introduce all these terms, project identification and selection. Then we will see how actually project identification process is going on. Project initiation. Then we will see pre-feasibility study, whatever the study we have to do regarding a project, pre-feasibility study and feasibility study we will see. Then project break-even points, project planning. We will introduce to the project planning, how the actually planning of the project is done. We will see that need of the project planning, project life cycle, roles and responsibilities of different members in that particular project. Teamwork, we will see how the particular people, all the peoples together work in a team. Project planning process and work breakdown structure. All these topics or all these points we will go in detail in this second unit. Now, let us see the first point, project identification. What is actually the project identification? How to identify a project that is actually equal to whatever the needs given by the person. The first and one of the critical step in the project cycle management is the identification and selection of a project. This is an important stage such that it can affect the whole process, including that the sustainability of the project after completion and transferring to the operational phase. Project identification and selection is a process to access each project idea and select the project with the highest priority. In this step, that is project identification, we have to find a project that will fulfill all the requirements of a client, and this particular project will be done within the time that is given by the client, and within the budget, or within the whatever the budget that have been sanctioned by the person. It will be done within all that budget, within the time, and it will fulfill all the requirements of the client. And in this particular project identification stage, we'll select a project that will be having a highest priority, so that which will be fulfilling all the requirements. The process of identifying a candidate idea for developing into a project is called as project identification. Means whoever the person, candidate or the client, whatever the idea of that person is, whatever the requirement of that person is, what is actually the thing he want, is nothing but in a project, that this particular process, developing this particular his idea into a project, converting his idea into a project, that is nothing but the project identification. This is a systematic process. Project identification process starts with the generation of product idea. Then, in order to select the most promising project, the entrepreneur needs to generate a few ideas about a possible project. Means in the project identification, initially we will generate we will take the idea from the person, and we will generate that particular idea into product means how to convert that particular idea into product. Step by step process of that is nothing but the project identification. Now, let us see different steps that are involved in the identification of a project. Identification is nothing but the step by step process of converting particular idea of a person, client, or candidate into the actual project. That particular consists of different steps. First, identify and meet the stakeholders, then set and prioritize the goal, define deliverables, create the project schedule, identify issue and complete a risk assessment, present the project plan to stakeholders. These are the steps involved in the identification of a project. Getting the idea of the project identification, this project identification is nothing but the first process or initiation of a project. Before the initiation of project means before actual initiation of the project, whatever the identifying actually what we have to do means whatever the concept of a person that we have to take from the person, and we have to identify what are the different ways that we can convert this idea into project is nothing but the identification of the project. After that, we will see the project initiation means how to initiate a project, how to start a project, actual work of the project, how we have to start the actual work. In the identification, we have simply taken the idea from the person, and we have thought about that idea and how to convert that idea into project. But in initiation, we have to start the actual work about the project. The initial phase is the beginning of the project, that is the initial phase. In this phase, the idea for the project is explored and elaborated. Whatever the idea that is explored, the goal of this phase is to examine the feasibility of the project. The prospective sponsors of the project evaluate the proposals and upon approval provides the necessary financing. Means in this particular step we will examine the feasibility of the project, means to what extent we can particularly convert this idea into project is nothing but the feasibility, means how we can form that particular project is nothing but the feasibility that will be examined this in this process. And after that, sponsors of the project will evaluate the proposal, whatever the proposal given by us or the particular team manager or the particular persons that are working in the team for the purpose of converting that idea into project, that they will give a proposal to the sponsors, and after the approval by the sponsors means that sponsor will examine that particular plan of that team. He will examine, he will find out each and everything, if all the requirements are going to be fulfilled, is it being done in the time, the particular time given by the person, is it being done in the cost that was given by the person. All this will be done in the proposal that will be taken by a sponsor, and after the approval of that all that things, he will provide the necessary finance to the team so that that particular team can actually start the work. In addition, decisions are made concerning who is to carry out the project, which party or parties will be involved, and whether the project has an adequate base of support among those who are involved. In this phase, the current or prospective project leader writes a proposal which contains a description of the above mentioned matter. Examples of this type of project proposal includes a business plan and a grant applications. Means here in this particular step, that is project initiation, we have to check that whoever the person that is doing the project or the person project leader, project manager, they are doing the particular process of project or they are doing the project, they are able to do that project or not. This all is checked in this step. And project leader, he will give a proposal for the project to the sponsors. Means here we have to examine ourselves. If we are ourselves means the project leader or project manager, he have to examine himself and his whole team that he is able to do the project as given by the person sponsor, he is able to fulfill all the requirements or not. Now let us see what are the different questions that are to be answered in the initiation phase. They are: why this project, means why we are doing this project, is it feasible, who are possible partners in the project, what should be the result, what are the boundaries of this project, what is outside the scope of this project, means all these questions are to be answered in this stage, so that the project he have to undergo, persons have to undergo, will be having a good output, will be having a proper project, that will be a feasible project. That is nothing but the questions we have seen now. Okay, getting the idea of initiation stage. Initiation stage, in short, we will see what is actually the initiation stage. Initiation stage is nothing but the starting phase of the project identification, where the project manager or the persons they are connected to the project, or the project leaders, they have to give a proposals to the sponsors. When the proposal um, is approved by the persons or by the sponsor, then and then only he will start the project initiation stage. In this project initiation stage, the persons will find out all the questions of the different questions regarding the project. If the project feasible, whatever the result of the project will be, what we can beyond the scope of this project, what, how can we do all the project in the given time, can you perform all the can you fulfill all the requirements of the person. All these questions will be being answered in this initiation phase. Now let us see the next point, that is pre-feasibility study. Now let us see what is actually the meaning of pre-feasibility study. A pre-feasibility study is rough screening aiming at identifying the most promising idea and discard the unattractive options. This reduces the number of options that are chosen to proceed with a more detailed feasibility study and eventually with business development, ultimately saving time and money. Means in pre-feasibility study we will do a rough screening. What is actually rough screening? Means we will choose the project idea that will meet all the requirements, and it will remove all the remaining ideas that do not give the good output. Means we will focus only on one particular idea, we will reduce all other ideas, all other options. We in initial stage we are having number of options regarding that particular project. We will in pre-feasibility study all the other options will be removed, and one option that is a good option that will be of giving a proper output, that option will be chosen by us, and all will be removed. Here it will remove or reduce all the options, that will focus on the only one option, so that we can do the detailed study for the project that is feasible. Now often the feasibility study that will returns only one most promising option. Okay, the assessment of the business idea has different focuses: teaching, regularity, environmental, economics and financial aspects are analyzed. A pre-feasibility study is a preliminary systematic assessment of all critical environments of the project, from technologies and cost to environmental and social impacts. Means in a systematic manner it will choose all the critical elements that are needed for the project, it will choose the technology, and it will choose the environment that is needed for the project to fulfill all the requirements. Now let us see what are the questions that will be answered in pre-feasibility study. As we have seen different questions in the initial stage, here in the it is the second phase or next phase to initiation of a project. In this we will find out, is the expected revenue enough to proceed with the evaluating the project more in depth? Are there any regularity issues of decisive importance for the project? Is it economically and financially worthwhile to go further with this idea? What is the project expected environmental and social impact? What are the risks and uncertainties connected to the idea? In this pre-feasibility stage, we have to check if the project is economically worthwhile. Does it have the enough finance to go further with the project? Means it will be done in the particular finance, whatever the options we have chosen, it will fulfill all the it will check all the options. Here we have to check the whatever the expected environment, that expected environment will be given to the project, and we have to also check a social impact of the project. Means we have to check whatever the project we will be doing, the impact of that project in social life, what will be done, that also we have to take in the considerations. And we have to at the end we have to find out all the risk that will come in fulfilling the project. Means in completion of the project, what are the risks that we have to undergo. All these questions we have to answer in this pre-feasibility study phase. Means it is one of the important stage, and it is second stage, it is next stage to the initial stage. Now let us see what are the different steps we have to do, or we have to do in study in the pre-feasibility phase. In the pre-feasibility, we have to check background of the project and scope of the project, revenue streams, resource evaluation, finance and technical key figures, project size and restrictions, business case, environmental and social aspect, and risk assessment. All these steps we have to go for a project. Means we have to go step by step for a project. In a pre-feasibility study, we have to consider all these 8 steps, and we have to answer all the questions regarding this 8th step. Now let us see in detail each and every step. The first step is background and scope. In this first step, we'll see scope of the study, investment, context, case description, power system, and stakeholders overview. All these points will be taken into consideration. In the second step, revenue streams, revenue sources, markets, support schemes or tariffs, or the important regularity aspects we will consider. In the third point or third step, that is resource evaluation. In this, sourcing of the fuel price, means assessment of the natural resources and expected energy grids. We will see whatever the natural resources are present, that we will be checking here. Financial and technical key figure. In this, technical parameters like efficiency, and is it going for a lifetime, all these figures we will consider. Project size and restrictions. In this, we will consider grid and system perspective, physical planning issue, space requirement, and other relevant barriers. In the business case, we will see economic attractiveness of the investors, rough financial analysis of the particular project, environmental and social aspect. In this, evaluation of the potential impacts of the on the area's environment and other social implications. In the risk assessment, assessment of the project risk and potential mitigation factors we will take into the considerations. Now, in the first step, that is background and scope, in this is nothing but the outset of the pre-feasibility study that should introduce the case study and shed light on the project context. We will see in that location of the project, then power system contents, we will see system description, annual demand of the power system and generation, installed capacity, and future projections. All this term will be considered in the power system context. That will be done in the background and scope first step. We will be checking on all the terms. Infrastructure and logistics. In this, ports, roads, availability of the services, grid infrastructure, all this will be taken into consideration. Then we will see politically context. Means we will see is the project politically stable or not. Regulation, key regulation in place and how it affects the project. After that, stakeholders will be also taken into consideration. The system operators, off takers, government bodies, local population, environmental groups. All these persons will come into the stakeholders, and we will checking on the stakeholders about the project feasibility study, pre-feasibility study. In this first step, background and scope, we will evaluate the project boundaries and energy system consideration that are needed here. In this, project boundaries that are needed to be defined at the project outset. This approach clearly states that which extent technical, economical, and environmental aspects are considered. Here we will see project boundaries can differ across the themes. Whatever the theme we are considering, that boundaries will be different for the different themes. For example, we will see the cost figure that might be concern only the facilities that will be under study, but environmental study that can extend to the larger areas impacted by the project. Means in the cost figure we will only see the facilities that will be checked under the study, that we have seen under the study, but in the environmental studies, in the initial study, pre-feasibility study, whatever the cost figure, that will be considered to the only study that is considered in the pre-feasibility study. But in the environmental study that we will do, that can extend the particular larger area by the project. The second one is revenue stream. In this revenue stream, we will understand the sources of revenue of the project. Whatever the sources we are having for the revenue of the project, that will be considered or that will be understood in the revenue stream stage or step. In this we will see there are three different points. We will see first merchant project that will be having power markets. Here we will need to collect the information on historical power prices, and it will make a projection of the future power prices or negotiation of PPA with the of tanks. In this particular, we will collect the historical information about the historical power prices, and we will make different projections of the future power prices. Means we will predict from the historical power prices, from this we will predict the future power prices and so on. The second one, in that vertically integrated system, in the vertically integrated system we have to collect information on the average generation cost in the system and current procurement regulation. Means on an average generation cost, that will be the information regarding that will be collected in this vertically integrated system. And third one, we will be having existing subsidy schemes. In this we will analyze the subsidy schemes that will be including duration remuneration, contractual consideration and taxation risk. All these terms we will be considering in whatever the existing subsidy schemes we are having for the particular project. Here in this step, whatever the revenue that can be sourced from different support schemes, agreements or markets, from these sources we can have the revenue for the project. In the evaluation of future power demand and power prices, in this we have to check whether the revenue stream that is stable over the years. Then, is it stable over the years? Does it involve the development of the future power prices and related risk of the overcapacity that is in the system? In this we have to check the development of the future power prices that we have been predicted above. We have to check that development of that prediction, and we have to check the related risk regarding that future power prices which are having overcapacities in the system, so that it will reduce the utilization of the power plants under the investigation. In this system, both yearly demand projection and load profiles that are the key aspects that we have to consider in relation to the power demand. Okay, for merchant projection and average power prices as well as hourly distribution should be considered in the merchantly project. The next step is resource evaluation. In this we have to evaluate all the resources that we have been taken into the consideration. In this, first we will do the RE mapping. Here tools like GIS that are good for the detailed mapping of the wind or solar resources, hydro catchments as well as biomass resources. We have to measure or we have to map all these things like wind and solar resources, different resources that have to be mapped. For that we are using RE mapping. Here at pre-feasibility stage, simpler tools like available resources, maps or online databases are usually sufficient for the purpose of pre-feasibility. But for the biomass it is important not only to map the potential resources but also interview the potential fuel suppliers also. Means we have to take into the consideration all the things regarding that mapping of the resources. We should not only map the potential resources but we have to take into the consideration the potential fuel suppliers. We have to interview them and we have to check how they are supplying the potential fuel. This is nothing but the resource evaluation. Here in the resource evaluation, let us consider an example of biomass plant or biomass project. In that we will take into the consideration, first we will see the power generation sources or fuels, means from where we can get the power that is needed for the project. We are having different options. One is wind, sun, organic waste from the plants and animals. Then we are having water also and different thermal energy, earth's crust. The potential for power generation dependency. What is the potential for the power generation dependency? Means for the wind, how the power generation is dependent on that. We will see distribution of the wind that is spread at a site, preferably over a multiple years. We can use that. Sun, global horizontal irradiation at a site. For the organic waste, we will see the feedstock availability including the quality of the feedback. And for the water, falling water having certain head and flow rate, preferably over multiple years. Means we can use this wind, sun, water over a multiple years. The annual power generation, we will see how is done in the wind. The wind speeds the distribution combined with the power curve. And now let us see what is the price for the fuel that in the resource evaluation. For the wind, there is no price for getting the fuel from the wind or for getting the power from the wind. Then for the sun, there is also no cost needed for that. For the organic waste and plants and animals waste, we have to check the price for the feedstock and for the transportation also. This is the resource evaluation. Now let's see the next step, that is fourth step, key technology and financial figures. In this we have to consider different figures. First, technological figures we will see. In this, typical capacity of the power plant we have to take into the consideration. Technical lifetime also, plant availability, then efficiency of the plant, space that is required for the plant to establish, capacity of the factor ranges. Other technical information is also needed, that is power curve for the wind, performance ratio for the power, then relevant of the project purposes and expected operations. Second one we have to consider, that is financial figures. These are the two important points we have to take into the consideration. We have to see capital cost for the plant, then operation and maintenance cost, weighted average cost for capacity, corporate tax rate. Okay, here the main sources that we can see for the technical and financial figures are, that include the existing studies in the literature and audits within the industry experts and relevant stakeholders. Means whoever have done the projects about that particular topic, we can see the research work done by the different people about that. We can take that particular material, we can study that and see all the technological and financial figures here. The next step is project size and setting. In this project size, we will see whatever the plant we are using for the purpose of that project. Whatever plant we are establishing, we have to consider all the things or all the components we are taking into the particular project, and we have to check the size of each and every component that we have to install in the project. For example, for the purpose of wind power and plant, we will consider the turbine ratings and number of turbines. For that getting the wind power plant, we have to consider what is different ratings of the turbine, what is the output that turbine is giving, and number of turbines needed. Means depending on the turbine ratings, we will find out how many number of turbines are needed, and on that size of the project or the sitting system of the project that will be considered here. For example, next one is solar panel plant. In the solar panel plant, we have to consider the surface area of that solar panel, and depending on that, size of the project plant will be decided. In the bioenergy powers, we have to consider total availability of the feedstock, whatever the feedstock we are having, how much that feedstock is available, and how we can store that feedstock in how much area. Depending on that, we will define the area for the bioenergy powers. After that, for the hydropower plant, we have to consider the size of reservoirs, means the water that is present in the reservoir. We have to consider size of the reservoir, and plants we are um, establishing for getting the energy from the water of the reservoir, or we have to consider the river flow rate, and depending on that, we have to check the size of the hydropower plants. Next one is geothermal power plants. In the geothermal power plant, we will find out the size of the well, and depending on the size of the well, whatever the plant we have to establish, we will calculate the total size that is needed for the plant to establish. This is how we calculate the project size. Now let us move to the next step, that is business case. We will consider inputs for business case. In this business case, we will get different inputs from different steps. Means in the first step, that is background and scope, we will get the cost of capital and financial environment. In the second, revenue streams. In that, the inputs for the business case we will get, that is the revenue over the time, what is the revenue demand of the revenue, and what is the outage revenue. All these inputs we will get for the business case study. Inputs to the business case study: from the resource evaluation, that will see the feedstock prices and potential capacities of the that particular plant. From the financial and technical key figures, we'll see the efficiency, lifetime, outage, and land requirement for the particular plant or particular project. And in the project size and restriction, whatever the input we will get for the business case, that is potential capacity and land requirements. Means these are nothing but the different inputs that will be taken from different steps. Means we have gone step by step. First step, background and scope, then revenue streams, resource evaluation. All these steps we have followed till the sixth step. In the sixth step, we will collect all the outputs of the different steps that as an input to the business case, and we will take all that inputs in the business case, and we will study over the inputs in the business case. In this step, environmental and social aspects, we have to consider the environmental and social impacts that are being on the project. In this, environmental and social impacts that are an important part of the feasibility study and pre-feasibility study that are often overloaded due to the focuses on the economics. In this, it will allow the hedge against the serious problem which will might arise during the project implementation and operations of the project. In pre-feasibility study, there are issues that are mapped into the minimum. The assessments that can be based on the current regulation, past experience, and acceptance levels. In the environmental and social considerations that can also feed into the risk assessments by studying the environmental and social things. We have to consider all the environmental and social things. By that, we can feed into the risk assessment. Means we can calculate what are the risks that can arise in the project operations. In the key aspects we have to consider for the environmental and social aspects are pollution of the air, water, and soil, land use that we are using for the project. Then visual impact, noise, odor, wildlife, and project acceptance from local stakeholders. The next step is risk assessment. In the risk assessment, risk is an event or a set of events that they should occur will have to effect on the project. Risks are classified within the different categories: political risk, then technical risk, social risk, and economical risk. In the political risk, it will changes in support schemes and taxation rates, international sanctions, etc. In the technical risk, we will see the efficiency of the technology, maintainability of the technology, and new technologies that will arise. If we are using one technology and different technologies are alive, or new technologies are arise that can replace that particular technology we are using, these are nothing but the different risk in technical risk concept. Economical risk, it will consider interest rates, credit risk, and option prices. All this will consider under the economical risk. In the social risk, safety of the project and labor environment will be considered. The risk can be different for different project, means whatever the plant we are having for the project, the risk will be changing depending of the project we are using, depending on the plant we are using, depending on the land we are using, depending on all the environmental condition, depending on the technologies, the different risk will be arising. These are different risk assessment, means in generally whatever the risk can be present for a project.